Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you here in 2025 with another episode of Ed Up. Of course, producer, co-founder Elvin Freitas has told me not to put a timestamp on any of these episodes, and I say when I give current events or anything like that and the episode comes out weeks later, obviously it sounds disjointed. But if I say here in 2025, I feel like I can get away with that for a while as I talk to my guests. So we're in 2025. The Ed Up Experience, as you know, recently passed over 400,000 downloads of our podcast over the last 5 years and over 1,000 episodes, talking to the trailblazing leaders in and around higher education, ed tech, and education in general today across the world, frankly. And one of the things that I can tell you that continually pops up, and you know what I'm talking about, is innovative teaching and learning methodologies. How do we, as a society who is, I would say we are coming to terms with our individual adoption with artificial intelligence and new ways to learn, how do we look at new technologies for teaching and learning? And so we have to bring on organizations and leaders that are trailblazing and creating the pathway that the rest of us will follow. And we've got one of those leaders here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him in right now. He's Josh Reibel. He is CEO at Dreamscape Learn. Josh, welcome to an Ed Up Mike. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for having me, Joe. It's great to be here.
Dreamscape Learn, I know a lot about it because I like to read a lot about the up and coming things going on in higher education. But let's assume for a moment that there's somebody here that's listening to this podcast that goes, Dreamscape Learn sounds cool. What the heck is it? And the Dreamscape name sounds somewhat familiar. Give us the, about section of the website. How did Dreamscape Learn come to be? And what do we need to know? Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
We're excited to announce the first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the Ed Up Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural conference. So that, again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
Well, great. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce the company to the people who haven't learned about it yet. And actually, the way you frame that question is in some ways the best way to do the sort of elevator pitch, because the origin story is really sort of core to what the company is about. But first, essentially, Dreamscape Learn is a curriculum experience company. We work mostly in immersive technology, VR, and sort of like your podcast, which has the word experience in it. I choose the word experience intentionally because for as long as those of us who have been working in education have known, curriculum isn't generally enjoyed as an experience in the sense of being a multisensory, immersive thing that takes you someplace. It tends to be a more passive digestion of information, and even in cases where schools have tried to deliver more hands-on, more simulation oriented kinds of activities, a lot of the technologies that have been available have been sort of limited for that. But let me start with the origin story, because I think it sort of helps explain who we are, and also explains why Dreamscape, the word, might be, as you said, familiar to people because it sounds a lot like DreamWorks. So our founder, Walter Parks, is a very celebrated and successful Hollywood creative producer who did found DreamWorks Motion Pictures with his 25-year collaborator, Steven Spielberg, and ran the studio for a long time. After as he came to the end of his career in filmmaking, he discovered a VR platform that got his attention in a way that VR in the past had not really, mostly because it created a more authentic sense of presence in these virtual environments than a lot of VR. Many of your listeners will have by now experimented with headsets in one way or another, or their kids are playing games, or they're playing games. And what they'll no doubt sort of remember from those experiences or note from those experiences is you tend to be kind of a disembodied head, tethered to controllers. It's not terribly social. And what this platform enabled that got Walter's attention was full body avatar rendered, no attachment to controllers. So everything is controlled by real gestures, not quite photorealistic, but close, and no perceivable lag. And importantly, with lots of multi-sensory haptic effects. So it's not just visual. You really feel like you're in these places and you are in them with other people in a way that feels like a shared environment. And so originally Dreamscape was a company called Dreamscape Immersive, which was an entertainment company that Walter founded to create amazing entertainment experiences, location-based entertainment experiences in VR, and that was moving along quite successfully until the pandemic, when nobody was going to the shopping centers and malls where these experiences were stood up. Fortunately, a few months before COVID set in, Michael Crow, president of ASU, who I know has been a guest on your podcast in the past, had reason to experience one of these experiences, and came out of it quite mind blown, feeling like this is the first time he had engaged with a medium or a technology platform that really made him feel like he could bring experiential learning and kind of learning through exploration to life in a transformative way, and said to Walter, this is a whole new way to teach, and why are you messing around with location-based entertainment? We should be building amazing higher ed applications on this platform. And that's sort of where the company began. And I'll just say a couple more things and then let you fire questions. So the company mostly focuses on STEM curriculum experiences, although we do some stuff in the humanities as well. And within the world of STEM, we're focused primarily on either replacing or supplementing and enhancing what has traditionally gone on in the lab. So the flagship product was a new version of a intro biology lab, where instead of marching off to the wet lab to do the kinds of experiments that we all did in our intro biology classes, students are sent off to a fantastical ecosystem where they encounter all sorts of novel and deep and interesting life science problems occurring out in the field, and have to analyze them and ultimately solve them. And so they're really positioned as practicing scientists. And because, not surprisingly, given Walter's background, these missions are really very narratively driven, very story driven. The students are essentially protagonists in a twisty turny plot driven narrative. And that's an important part of both what's distinctive about what we do and why it's had the kind of impact it's had, which we'll talk about as we go, I'm sure. Because it turns out when we all know that we can't wait to see what happens next in the episodic television that we watch, whether it's a Netflix series or whatever. It's not that common that students just can't wait to find out what's going to happen next in a curriculum experience they're having. But that's what embedding all of this learning in a emotionally compelling story with all the kinds of suspense and twists and turns and character development that entertainment oriented stories have turns out to do. And we're finding that students that in the past have really struggled with introductory STEM courses at the post-secondary level are now thriving. And it's really clear to us that it's about the way that this kind of a program engages.
Amazing.
That's a lot. Josh, that's a lot to talk about. And so as you're talking, the first thing that comes into my mind as you're talking is the Matrix. When Neo and Trinity are in a blank white space and things start loading up around them. And so how does the classroom come to be created? Is there a group of people that are, and so like, as an example, I'm thinking to myself, like I'm walking into the ocean at some point and I'm able to see a fish swim by me or touch it or look at the eggs floating, in the water, whatever. Someone has to program that. Someone has to come up with the ideas to say, hey, you need to be in this type of land and this type of setting, and it needs to load up. And are there frames? Like there's 100 different classrooms that have been created that I could select from and so on. Give us that creation part of this.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's part of what's so fun and quite different about what we do. So when we build these things, and I'll say a little bit more about what the things are like in a moment.
Yeah.
It is the collaboration of story writers, just like in sitting around a story table as if they were writing for television or movies, animators, artists, and other creative production type people, and then of course subject matter experts. In the case of biology, which I mentioned, they're biologists. We were also working on chemistry and astronomy. So university-based professors who are trying to figure out, like, what should the learning goals be? How do we create a narratively driven curriculum that will lead to those learning objectives being met? And then technologists who are doing a lot of the technical programming. And it really is that it's those three legs, the technology, the creative production, and the subject matter experts and pedagogy all coming together. So to give a sense of how this stuff unfolds, in biology and chemistry, there are 6 modules. Each module has 3 what we call acts, essentially a beginning and a middle and end, encountering of a problem.
The story arc, if you will.
That story arc, the hero's journey, all of that. But one thing that's very important to recognize is for every 10 or 15 minutes that the students are in VR, which is about the length of each of those acts, there's 2 or 3 hours of work away from the immersive technology, just in a regular classroom, learning the math and science they need in order to solve the problem. So as an example, our cell biology module, in the first act, the students discover that there is a species of creature in this sort of alien sanctuary that they've been sent to called spotted gliders, who are dying at an alarming rate. And
Surprise!
The first question is, why are the spotted gliders all dying? And then you do some biopsying of their organs, and you discover that they have cancer tumors on their lungs. The first thing you do is collect some environmental data to figure out if there's some environmental carcinogen causing that. That's 10, 12 minutes of VR. But then there's 2 hours of learning how to do the modeling and plotting of all that data you collected to figure out, is there enough variance between normal conditions and the conditions that you found there that could possibly explain widespread cancer? And it turns out there isn't. So you go back into the field, the virtual field in VR, do some more. I don't want to, some of your listeners may become customers, so I don't want to
don't reveal everything.
I don't want to be a spoiler, but anyway, you collect more data, do more analysis, begin to develop an alternative hypothesis for what could be explaining this, go back to the lab away from the VR, learn more math and science that are relevant to figuring out whether you've got this right. A lot of very detailed work on how cells signal to each other and control their reproduction. And eventually, it turns out that there is a quite surprising but really scientifically interesting explanation for why these creatures are all getting cancer at the same time. And in the third act, you are the hero who solves that problem. And so, no, it's not really a library of classes, although we have some other products that are a little bit more like that I'll talk about in a moment. It's more a very linear and sort of sequential series of experiences that are designed to put students in the position of having to analyze and solve really interesting and emotionally compelling problems. We have seen fully formed adults actually cry at the end of some of these acts because there's a very emotional twist and turn where something seemingly tragic happens to an important character, and like that's sort of an important point in all this. Like, how often do you cry in math class unless it's because you were really struggling and failed?
Yeah,
And
that's a little bit different type of emotion than most
little
of
bit
us
different type of
experience in math
emotion,
class.
exactly. And I think we're really discovering that there's some very fundamental core human qualities that have been sort of set aside in school a lot, and that really need to be mobilized to help students care and become invested and motivated and energized, and feel like they're not doing work when they're doing the work.
To be astonished.
This tech it's cool. And that's the emotional part of this is interesting because, we know often, to your point, when you're in a class, so let's say you're a new student, you're coming into an 101, Bio 101. I mean, emotionally, you're thinking, holy crap, what am I going to do? Crack open this book. None of it makes sense. Do I fit in here? Everybody's flying in and out of here. I don't even know how to get to this class. Overwhelming emotions. And then you can look at all the student mental health stuff that's it's compounding even worse than it used to be. And you go, how do I create positive emotions associated with this very hard work? And so I wonder, when you look at practical application of this VR environment, are we talking about new students who you think are going to have trouble in school, and getting this VR early gives you a higher retention rate, so that your students are staying in school and you're maximizing your net tuition revenue, and so this is an investment in retention? Is it for the more advanced classrooms? Is it both? Think of it, just tactically tell us how you see schools implementing it.
Well, I think it's both, but I'm going to start with the first category of student that you mentioned, because it's in some ways the most important part for both us and our customers, who are serving large. So one of the reasons we started in intro biology and intro chemistry, these intro STEM courses, is they're heavily enrolled. They are gateway courses to lots of in-demand careers, and they have historically have massive dropout and failure rates.
Big time.
And in addition to learning the life science or natural science that they teach, they both demand and teach a lot of quantitative reasoning skills that are transferable and applicable to all kinds of things. And so we need to help students succeed in these courses. And yes, a lot of our customers very much view their investment in Dreamscape Learn as an effort to substantially reduce those dropout and failure rates, shrink achievement gaps. And I'll say a little bit more about some of the data that's come out of some random control trials that we've done in a moment. That said, we have all kinds of different schools working with us, and in different curricular contexts where the student success issues are different from dropout and failure rates, for instance. And one of the things that I think we're starting to discover and recognize is this medium can really change what a school can be in some very fundamental ways. So the schools we all went to are sort of destinations. Like, the students go there, they're pulled out of the world or larger universe that they're supposed to be discovering and getting excited about and learning about, sort of trapped in these hermetically sealed things we call classrooms, and lectured at. They read textbooks, they do problem sets, but they're really kind of isolated from a lot of the magic that they're supposed to be getting enthralled by. And this medium sort of reverses that. Now students come to school, yes, but the school becomes a departure hub where they and their fellow students and teachers can journey out to the universe, any imaginable place, at any time in the future or the past, at any scale, whether it's inside an atom or in the extracellular matrix, or it's going to the Sistine Chapel to look at Michelangelo's ceiling in great detail, or it's down to the Great Barrier Reef and looking at how the coral has bleached over decades, and understanding the climate dynamics and phenomena that are causing that, really anywhere. And so many of our students, even well-prepared students, have seen so little of the world that enabling them to visit a world-class art museum or the Great Barrier Reef or the lunar surface or places none of us could ever go in ways that feel very authentic. Like, when you are in these environments, nobody's checking a cell phone. Like, nobody's thinking about the argument they're having with their roommate or with their parents. You are completely absorbed and transported. And in a way that nothing 2D really can do, because as we look at our screens, we have all this other stuff going on, our peripheral vision, we're hearing things in the background from our regular lives. But this is a medium that really can take people somewhere. And so, yes, a primary goal and objective is student success in intro STEM courses, but it's also a transformation of the college or university and sort of what it can be. Let me just go back quickly to the first thing, though, because we have done a lot of quite formal efficacy studies, especially at ASU, where all of this work has been incubated with very large numbers of students. Tens of thousands of students have gone through this stuff at ASU. And there are two things that we found that were very interesting and found very, very consistently. One is in the biology program, the sort of flagship product, students were way more likely to get an A in lab in Dreamscape Learn than in business as usual. And you might say, well, but maybe it's just easier and it's kind of fun and games and there's all this VR. But we also sent the program off to 5 biologists at R1 institutions to compare and contrast with traditional lab curriculum, and they universally said this was substantially more rigorous, especially more quantitatively demanding than a typical intro biology course, so much so that a bunch of them didn't think it was possible that you could be getting freshmen through this course. So more rigor, more demanding, more A's. That's all good. In many ways, the more important finding, and the one that from a mission point of view is so exciting, is there was traditionally a quite large achievement gap between the highest performing demographic groups and the lowest performing demographic groups in intro biology, 45% difference. It's almost disappeared. It's down to about 3 or 4%. The traditionally lowest performing demographic group was underrepresented male Pell eligible students, so largely Black and brown boys who come from low socioeconomic status. Those students were averaging, I think it was a 74 in their biology labs before we came along, and now the average is 94. So, it's really, everybody is succeeding, and it's sort of blindingly obvious why. If your first day of chemistry class is read chapter 1 and do the problem set at the end of the textbook or a lecture, it's one kind of thing. If your first day of chemistry class is you come into this sort of special classroom and you put on a headset and suddenly you're flying a turbocopter through the foothills of the Himalayas, epic, discovering that a remote farming village has like an existential crisis happening with its yak herd, and it's your job to figure out why and how to solve it. It's a very different kind of experience. And so yeah, the impact's been really impressive so far and really exciting, and we have tons and tons to learn and lots of things that we'll get wrong before we get right, but there really does seem to be a very different disposition that students bring to this work than a more traditional curriculum.
I like your style, dude.
I like it, and the idea that your first day of class seems more like the video game you played before you came to class than the dusty textbook sitting on in the library. For all things considered, we are in a more technological world. We see students now come to colleges and universities with an expectation that those colleges and universities deliver modernized technology that they can experience that looks a whole lot like things look in their personal life. And I always say that higher education, we as an industry, we're not very good at making the experience for students look like our personal experience in our own personal lives. And I use this, people like, oh, you say that all the time, Joe, but it's the truth. When we watch Netflix, we skip the intro. We can't even wait 1 minute, not even 1 minute for the introduction to pass. We're skipping it. Amazon package comes same day, next day. I mean, we are programmed for this immediacy and ease, and students are feeling that same way. So if you give them something completely opposite than what they're used to, they aren't going to do it, and they go to places that do, which brings me to my point. This sounds great, Josh. I think the whole concept, boy, I'm a dinosaur faculty member, or I'm a cost-conscious administrator, and this sounds great, but I just, is this right for my university? Can I really do something like this? Because all I'm thinking about is the cost of a headset. That's the first thing that hits me is cost of a headset, how could I put 100 of these in a classroom and have it be cost efficient? I know that part of the answer is retention increase pays for the investment. I know that, but people don't think that way right out of the gate. They just go, oh, that's probably right for Arizona State with Michael Crow because he's one of the most innovative presidents in the world. But is it right for my XYZ university in my small city? Ellucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list!
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go!
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
I guess I would ask that provost or president or board member or whoever is asking themselves that question, do you not have large numbers of intro STEM students who are not succeeding? A, so you have this problem. Everybody has this problem. And B, how much are you spending every year to sustain, maintain, outfit wet labs so that intro students can pipette and do gels and so on that don't seem to be teaching them anything? These are not students who are likely to be practicing biologists or even necessarily in medical or healthcare fields several years down the road. And if they are, they will have plenty of time in their 200, 300, 400 level classes to learn their way around the apparatus of a wet lab that you could have that serves far fewer students. But you are spending tens of millions of dollars and having to restock those labs with toxic chemicals every year in order to bring students through cookie cutter experiments that people have done for decades and that nobody really thinks teaches students anything important about the fundamentals of thinking like a scientist and the quantitative reasoning skills that we want our intro level students to develop so they can progress. To me, the cost of bringing Dreamscape in to have a very different kind of intro level lab experience is much lower than those tens of millions of dollars of maintaining large scale wet labs. So it's the classic case that our institutions are used to spending money in certain ways, don't necessarily stop and think, is there another way? And so one has to kind of compare what do my economics look like delivering a different kind of experience from the economics of delivering the experience I deliver today. And I think if most school leaders look at it that way and think about the importance of retaining students in intro STEM courses and having them succeed and move on to the more advanced coursework and not dropping out and stopping out and all the rest of it, they will come to the conclusion that I hope they come to, which is that there's great cost benefit here.
Well, there's also the sort of unspoken part of this, which is the marketing piece, where if you are going into a university and this is your first day in your first bio class, and your sister, brother, best friend is coming the next year, and you're going, man, this university, I just went to my biology class and I put on this headset and I was in the trying to take biopsies from aliens on UFOs, whatever it might be. That sounds really cool. And kids who are coming into college are looking for really cool technology to learn. And this is something that I think colleges and universities are struggling with right now, is how to balance the sustainability model and legacy systems that we have. We're in industry that just kind of has tech that's been sitting around for years and years and years. And books, right? We have faculty, we have others that are just sort of beholden to what they've done before. And so do you have to find, let's say you go out there, you get a new client that's interested in Dreamscape Learn. the faculty have to go, yes, I can adapt my curriculum. I can adapt my curriculum to this. I can get it through the committee that probably has to review this stuff. And, what is that process looking like for y'all? Is it really quick? Are you getting barriers? What's the deal? What's the deal with the faculty involvement?
One thing I want to comment on before, because it relates to that question, before I directly answer that question, kind of ties some things you were saying before to this topic, which is, it's important to remember that, as I said, for every 10 or 15 minutes that they're in VR, there's 2 or 3 hours in a regular class. And so we're not replacing books with immersion. And in fact, one of the most, I'm a humanist by training. I want kids reading, and I want, and the part of what is so compelling about all of this is the amount of traditional academic research and work that students are enthusiastically doing, because it's contextualized in this larger narrative where they care.
Their learning is catalyzed by the technology.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's not that it's, learn your biology in VR. It's learn your biology because the bit is in your mouth. Like, you are charged with solving a problem in a compelling, fictional environment that you're excited about. And so, so that's thing one. And the reason it relates to thing two, the question about faculty buy-in and all of that, is I think we often do have faculty hear that their provost or president has gotten excited about this, and they're sort of antsy about it. And my guess is a little bit knee-jerk resistant. Although we also hear about tons of faculty that get all excited right out of the gate. But then when they get exposed to what we're actually doing, and they see that it isn't edutainment, that it's really rigorous, and that the students are working really hard, and that a lot of that work is not in the immersive experience, it's in the lab, they almost universally say, this is great. Like, I wish my students were that excited about the lecture I was going to give next week. And remember, we're not replacing the lecture. So they're not, that's part of the key to
you're replacing part of the lab.
Exactly. And a lot of, I hate to be disparaging of labs, because there are some that are great, and especially in sort of a very important purpose. But in general, the people doing the core instruction in introductory STEM courses and the professors who design those courses, they don't tend to think that the labs that go with them are that great. And so, if we are able to deliver students that are leaning forward in their lectures because they tie to an experience they're having sort of ancillary to that lecture, the faculty is excited about that. And it's not that, of course, there are times when faculty resist, or they feel like the 6 modules that I mentioned in our program don't 100% align with the topics they most want students having a hands-on experience for. But more often than not, we get buy-in very, very quickly. It'll be interesting to see if that continues to be the case as we move into more academic areas and more fields, and where we're not just a lab, we're other things. But so far, there's been a real acceptance.
So if there's a school out there right now that's thinking about your product, is this example, the intro to bio, the main product, the beginning product that you talked about, scalable? Where is this a prefabricated model? Now I'm putting it in to replace part of my lab. I'm going to get out of it because it's designed for me to get out of it what I need to get out of it, and I'm going to do everything else around that lab the same. So it's not like it needs to be amended by university by university by university. It's kind of a plug and play.
Yeah. So, I mean, much like, it would only make sense to make the kind of investment we've made in this kind of content if it can scale, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to have a different biology class at each university, or else this doesn't make any sense. We sort of feel like we're in the hits business, that, much right. Like movie business, we're trying to create something that has, that can displace what's been there in the past at scale across a diverse audience of universities and their students. And so, But the delivery model is important to understand. So right now, what we do is not delivered direct to headset to the students sitting in their dorm room. There are a few different modalities, but they are, so the first one is a special classroom that gets built out as a facility on campus. And by the way, another reason that presidents and provosts really like that is, we all know higher ed is in the business of building facilities. it's a naming opportunity. They can raise money against it. It becomes a hub of innovation on the campus. I've had
and there's a lot of open space in some of these universities that could be repurposed into something really cool.
Or they have next generation, innovation labs or tech centers, and this is a perfect thing to put there. And so when donors come, when prospective students come, when other visitors come, they see innovative things happening on campus. And as I said, a lot of the time, the Dreamscape Immersive Learning Center is a place where faculty and students are coming together to do really interesting work, not just in biology, but all of our customers get access to the creator tools so they can build their own Dreamscape experiences on our platform. And we have lots of customers where faculty, students, and somebody in the computer science department have come together to start to build things that we have nothing to do with, that are just really interesting curricular applications of the medium. But coming back to the delivery model, so one is the what we call a pod, the fixed special classroom. We can also now put that special classroom inside of a trailer so that it can be moved around. So if you're a community college district, you've got 9 or 10 different campuses, and you can't afford to build 9 or 2 different fixed Dreamscape Immersive Learning Centers, well, maybe 2 mobile pods that can be driving around, spending a certain amount of time each week at each campus can work for you. And then we're headed towards a delivery model which will be available in less than a year that we call the cart, which is not quite as fully immersive as the fixed pod experience, but is maybe 75 or 80% of the immersiveness at 1/10 the cost. And so imagine a cart that can wheel into any classroom, has 32 headsets, always charging, a content server that makes sure the right content is on the right devices at the right time, comes in with its own network so that if Wi-Fi is sketchy in the classroom, that doesn't matter because we've brought our own Wi-Fi network in. So the point there is that we've got a range of delivery modalities that can be tuned to the goals and needs of different kinds of clients and the budgets of different kinds of clients.
What else haven't we touched on Dreamscape Learn that you want to talk about today or tell our audience, things that are going on? We want to bring you back just quickly for our subscriber-only mini episode that we'll do at the conclusion of this episode. But what else do you want to say to the general audience about Dreamscape Learn?
Well, just that the possibilities for the medium are really endless. That we can't possibly, with our small studio, build the range of content that has great potential on this platform. And that's part of why we are making the creator tools available to our customers, to publishers, to others. And I'm really enthusiastic about building out a whole developer ecosystem so that experiences, maybe not as fully plotted and narrative as our Biology in the Alien Zoo experience, which is 200 minutes of VR, authored by a great Hollywood producer. Not everything has to be that fully produced or that story driven. In fact, we're doing things that are much simpler, like just transporting people to locations so they can experience them in a hands-on way with relatively little interactivity. So the real power, though, of the platform will be as more and more of our adopters build things, and we're starting to see stuff emerge that we had nothing to do with. That's really terrific, and we'll be building out a marketplace that allows schools.
Yeah, I want to download the Safari Desert, right? I want to download a desert and experience somebody sinking into quicksand and see what that's right, and being able to crowdsource those experiences is, I think, where that's going to be really interesting to see what people
and the curriculum that goes with them. So it's
one
thing to take somebody someplace. It's another thing to then support faculty. And all right, so how do you use this well in the classroom? And we're working on both things. Our partners are working on both things, and it's really exciting.
Well, there you have it, everybody. We're going to bring Josh back for a quick mini episode here for subscribers only, but I want to outro here to the greater audience. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Josh Reibel. He's the CEO of Dreamscape Learn. And Josh, where should we go if we want to hear more about Dreamscape Learn, research Dreamscape Learn, or contact you or somebody to find out what you do and how you do? Where do we go?
Well, of course, we have a website, dreamscapelearn.com, but I encourage anybody who's interested in learning more, frankly, to contact me directly. One of the best ways to experience what we do is to visit ASU, where it's built out in as robust a form as anywhere and as you can imagine. And there you have the opportunity not just to experience the stuff firsthand, but to interact with the faculty that are working on it, because there are large numbers of subject matter experts, not just our team of creatives. building these things. And it's always really interesting when people from other schools get a chance to interact with the ASU crew and think about, all right, so how would this live in my institution?
Well, there you had everybody. Another great episode of the EdUp Experience. And we're going to bring Josh back shortly. You've just EdUp'd. All right, everybody, we're back with Josh for a little mini episode for our subscribers only. And Josh, I wanted to ask you, because this is I think one of the more important questions is, when you create something like this, the innovative technology, people, and you talked about it earlier on the episode, people are starting to create things that you haven't created that are great. What are some of the asks that have come your way? Like, Josh, it would be great if I could, have every student enter the library in VR and pull a book off the shelf. Like, are there asks for things now? And maybe some of the ways you're seeing innovation on the campuses you're working with start to take over, and you see new applications for the technology.
So totally, there are sort of like high-level general asks and then highly specific asks. So the general asks are like, help us solve the math problem. Like, we've got a huge math problem, especially at the community college level. Can't you do calculus? And yes, we will attack that at some point in the near future. And we're only beginning to think through how. The specific asks are really interesting. They tend to be, just as examples, language learning. It's supposed to be immersive from the get-go. Like, couldn't you have a whole lab sequence for learning Spanish where 1 week you're dropped off at a cafe and you have to order your cafe con leche and your lunch in Spanish, and you're interacting with AI-powered avatars who are your servers, and that whole experience gets captured and delivered to the teacher so they can see how you negotiated all that. And then the next week you're in an airport and your flight gets canceled and you have to rebook and get in your taxi to get to the hotel. Like, it would be such a turbocharged version of the language lab. And which, by the way, we have not started working on, but we would love to, and we hope that one of our customers who knows more about language teaching than we do does. I also have a suspicion that that will bring out another aspect of the medium that is really important pedagogically. A lot of us, when we took foreign language, were sort of afraid to try. I was one of those students who, like, I did fine on all the grammar tests, but the idea of having to respond in real time, in a conversational exchange was terrifying to me, because I knew I was only half understanding what was said, and I was probably going to formulate my response in all kinds of crazy ways that didn't sound right, and it was embarrassing. The other students are watching. When you are an avatar in a virtual environment who doesn't actually look like you, there's enough separation from your own identity that it's my theory that students will become much bolder and much more willing to just go for it and try and not feel as under the spotlight and on stage as they do when it's their real selves in a real classroom. So that's an interesting thing. We get asked all the time about pure simulation things, like, we need
surgical, like surgery kind of stuff.
Exactly. We need to teach students to repair a meniscus. Can't they do it virtually before they do it on a cadaver, before they do it on a real human? And those are perfectly good applications of VR. It's not where our sweet spot is, because so much of what we're trying to do is create engagement through not just narrative, but also cinema, uses of the audio track and of the sort of shot selection to draw people in. There are elements of simulation in what we do, but it's not the centerpiece necessarily. But for instance, the makers of a lot of the medical imaging equipment that gets used, sonograph, MRI, X-ray, et cetera, have come to us wanting to work on a whole curriculum around medical imaging, and we may well do that. And that there it would be a combination of amping up engagement and using the simulation capabilities of the medium to help people learn how to do that work and read the charts in a virtual environment before they do it in a real environment. We get a lot of questions about things that are very hard to visualize. So putting students at the atomic level so that they can see actions happening around them. And we do that in our chemistry product. There are scenes where you are actually inside of a reaction or inside of a titration. And part of the power there, I think, is not just that you can experience it in a way that doesn't really work in a 2D diagram. It's also you'll never forget it. Think about the things that happened, whether they were in kindergarten or high school or college, that are those sort of landmark moments in your education. You'll never forget the day teacher so and so taught you such and such, because they did it in a way that was so either compelling or vivid, or in a kind of emotional or sensory way, registered. When you nucleotides bonding in this environment, like it makes an impression that means like you'll just never forget.
I'm imagining like students just don't take the headset off and go, that was fine. They're taking their headset off going, whoa, right? Like this is crazy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the things that's been interesting that also came out in the efficacy studies that were done, we were a little worried that like the amount of that response would taper as students did more and more of it, just because the novelty would wear off. And it turned out that the last module they did in this study got the highest just like this was fun rating of all of them. And so it may be that over time, as students do more and more VR, that some of that, whoa, that was just mind-blowing sort of reaction will diminish. But I actually think that the burden's on us to make sure that doesn't happen. Like people have been watching movies for 100 years. You still come out of certain movies like a changed person because they were beautifully shot, really well written, really well acted. And so, if we invest the right talent in creating extraordinary experiences, it's not actually about the technology. It's about what was done with the technology from a creative point of view and an educational point of view that made for a wow experience.
What do you see for the future of higher education? I mean, you're kind of at the front end here. What do you see for this industry as we move forward, just generally? At Ellucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
artificial intelligence.
Explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Did you buy your tickets yet? Higher Education's first podcast conference is coming July 12th. Go to higheredpodcon.com, higheredpodcon.com. Get your tickets. Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Well, you can go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Well, what I hope we will see is a reinvigoration of general education. I am somebody who's been somewhat concerned. So while, yes, I absolutely agree that post-secondary education has to make sure that it is delivering career-aligned experience, at least, by that I mean, it can't be the case that students go to college and then emerge, not qualified to be productive and to make good lives for themselves and their families. That said, I do worry that we've gone a little too far in the direction of thinking post-secondary education is only relevant when it is very career-aligned in highly practical ways. And I think part of what's happening in the schools that we're working with is the administration, the faculty, and the students are all saying that, oh, wow, like gen ed really matters. Like when you take a bunch of students who didn't think they were at all interested in art history and you bring them to the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, as one of our programs does, and they're taken through an amazing curated guided tour of this fascinating building that has played all kinds of different political and religious roles over centuries, and they come out like, holy crap, that was wild. And it gets them interested in ideas in a way that, it's hard to do with a textbook. And I really hope that what we'll see over the next decade or two is a recognition that we need to turbocharge gen ed so that before students specialize, before they go into career training, they become generally educated people that have some rooting in the big ideas of humanistic inquiry, scientific understanding, quantitative reasoning, and then they can go off and use those transferable skills, not just in their work, but, to have great lives. Yeah, I just think it's so important. And I do understand why if we can't, as I say, turbocharge all that gen ed stuff with with something that makes it resonant, it will be continuing of a death spiral of the humanities and of other things that people deem to be not career relevant.
It does amaze me, to your point, how quickly we've boiled down education to financial gain. Post-secondary kids, and I get it, right? Like, you got to have a job, you got to be able to make money and on your investment, if you consider an investment. But we really boiled it down so quickly to how much money can I make directly after I've gotten this degree or this experience, instead of the 5th job or the 10th job or the thinking I had to do and learning I had to go through between my 4th and 5th job that got me to the 6th job. And we don't quantify that, and we do a bad storytelling, as we're talking about storytelling here as a part of this. Telling the story of higher education more broadly, of, you always see these surveys, 78% of students said their degree is not applicable to what they do. It's like there's hundreds and thousands and millions of students that are doing things that aren't applicable to their actual degree, but they got it because they got a degree, because they had general knowledge. And somehow we have to bring back that higher education's about more than the financial gain. There's other gain that's more than financial that helps them in the long run.
100%. And obviously we're living in politically very, very divided times. And I think, civics education, American institutions, teaching and learning, and just general humanistic understanding of, where did this country come from? What were its founding ideas? How do we continue to organize and conduct our affairs in ways that are consistent with what those founding ideas were? If that all gets lost, it's just going to become an increasingly transactional society in ways that I think are really damaging.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Well, you heard it here, everybody. He's Josh Reibel. I'm Joe Salustio, and this is the EdUp Experience. We thank you for listening. You've just EdUp'd.